H-U-L-L-C-I-T-Y. 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 That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm joined by Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty good. Well, after what was a very promising, or like, I don't know, maybe not promising, it's the wrong time of the year to have promising results, I suppose, but a pleasant result against Watford.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting last week on the podcast. Logan and I were talking about these two games and kind of going into the episode, I was thinking, geez, these are two pretty tough games. You know, Boro sitting in fourth in the table, Watford still theoretically in with a chance of the playoffs, and obviously as a relegated side, pretty tough test. But we sort of talked ourselves around to almost backing ourselves in for the 6 points, which at one stage in the Boro game was sort of on. But yeah, look, we'll talk that Boro game first of all. It seemed to follow a bit of a pattern that we've seen in a couple of games this season. You know, I sort of think of the Norwich game as a good example where we took the lead early despite, I mean, not undeservedly, but probably kind of against the run of play to an extent. The Sunderland game's another good example where we scored early and then kind of let in a run of goals quite, like, you know, obviously they scored 2 goals quite quickly in succession. It seems a bit of a trend, and I think Rosenia talked after the game about the fact that, you know, to go for promotion next season, we need to change or fix our mentality with that sort of situation in terms of digging in a bit harder, which, you know, we'll talk about Watford afterwards, but I mean, Watford, we certainly seem to show that a bit more. But, you know, hard to be too unhappy with the Boro result given just the form that they're in.
Yeah, look, it was interesting to watch because it was pretty. The first section of that game was sort of pretty back and forth, and I thought we played well, they played well, but we sort of it was sort of, as you said, like it was deserved in the in the sense that we'd earned the goal, but it did sort of feel like Middlesbrough probably had the better of the play for the most part. But we'd held them out. We got the goal, and then, as you said, it just was an absolute capitulation. We just to concede 3 goals in 6 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Is, I mean, it's not good enough at any level, let alone, you know, at the second highest division in England. And so that was pretty disappointing. But I think, like, probably part of it is like they know, like, there's obviously lots of players that are playing for futures and all those sorts of things, but I think they do realise, like, that we're I don't know if we quite were maybe at the Middlesbrough game, but we were very close to being, you know, mathematically safe. There's not a lot to play for, but perhaps it was just a little bit of that. But then that ties into, you know, Rosinia's comments about mentality, that you need to be, you know, if you want to be pushing for the playoffs for promotion, then you need to be able to get up for every game, regardless if it's, you know, how big or insignificant you might feel that it is. So I think we had a few good performances within that game, but I think you know, when you're coming up against, you know, guys like Akpom and Archer, like they only need half a sniff and they'll cause some damage. So I think that's sort of really what we saw.
Yeah, and Akpom's just been given player of the season, so it kind of typifies the year that he's had. I think I saw that he didn't get a squad number at the start of the season from Boro. That's sort of how low he was sort of seen in the squad by Chris Wilder at the time, clearly. And boy, has he proven them wrong in his performances. Sort of a player to call out from our point of view. Well, 2 players, I suppose, one positive, one negative. I'll start with the negative, was Pelkas. I thought he had a number of chances to score or to at least, you know, get a shot on target or have a bit more of an impact on the play with the positions he was getting in. Really disappointing game from him. We saw him come out of the side for the Watford game with a couple of games to go, and Rosenia's given a few vague comments in the media about him and Malcolm. I would suspect that's almost his time up with us.
Yeah, look, he's he over the last sort of month, I guess, he's been sort of in and out a couple of times. He's had and I suppose should have been his opportunity to try and secure an extended deal or secure a move elsewhere or something. But his performance is like he's been busy, but as you say, no end product, no like always just seems to need to take an extra touch or an extra second on the ball when the opportunities are there realistically to make the pass, to make the shot, to do whatever he needs to do. But yeah, not great there. But I think the flip side is we had, Ali scored a cracking goal.
Yeah, he was going to be my positive. I was going to say, yeah, great goal,
like sensational goal. A huge leap. I know he can run, and so it wasn't completely unexpected. But he was a foot above his marker.
Yeah, where's that then?
Right,
I've never seen that from him.
Yeah, so a huge leap and then a really good quality, just glancing header, across goal, bottom corner, that pretty much just left the keeper with nothing. So that was a really nice goal. I think obviously then that second period, Darlow became very, very busy.
Yeah.
And even for the goals, particularly the first goal was the deflection, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a bit unlucky on that one. He dived and then it took a deflection off, I think, Macca or something. And
I think it was Macca, yeah.
Yeah, where he just come from.
And even the second goal from Macca was, I was gonna mention it more with the Watford game as well, because I think there was one passage of play where he was a bit poor in defending a chance. But it seems like the last two games, sort of, you see it sometimes with players, they signed a nice new deal and take the foot off the pedal a little bit. But that second goal, I thought pretty uncharacteristic from him in terms of obviously the keeper launches it long, it bounces over his head, which you sort of say, okay, you didn't win the first ball, but then you've just got to deal with the second ball. You've got to just get, strong body the striker out of the way, clear the ball or anything like that. But he just gets pushed off it way too easily.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed with that particular piece of defending as a defender myself. I thought, one, he should have there's plenty of time it came from their Middlesbrough's keeper, so he should have been able to read that fairly easily. And as you say, even if you don't win the header or win the initial thing, then when it bounces, there's heaps of time to either get himself in a better position or at least he has to fight for that a bit more. He was pushed off way too easily for a player that we've seen plenty of times, throw his body around, and be quite strong on the ball. So that was a bit of a disappointing performance from him. And there was a couple of moments even in the Watford game, as you alluded to, that where he gave me a bit of a scare.
Yeah, I mean, look, you say you're a defender. I played my first game at centre back on the weekend, so I'm clearly now an absolute expert on centre back positioning and play.
Yeah, that's how it works.
That's exactly how it works.
If you play in Australia where you're paying fees, paying to play, then yeah, we're clearly the experts on positioning.
Absolutely.
And all things football, but
yeah. Well, look, we'll talk about that Watford game in a second. If you wanted to give your votes for this game first.
I honestly hadn't even thought about it. I barely even remember it. Let's see. I will go. I'm just gonna go a bit wild, and I'll give the 3 points to Ali just for a tremendous goal. And I think throughout the rest of the game, he did work really hard, and he was involved in lots of good stuff. But just, we've been waiting a long time for him to sort of start getting some sort of consistency, and that's a couple of goals in a couple of weeks. So I think that was really good. I'll give 2 points to Darlow because I think he was not really at fault for any of the goals and pulled off still quite a few good saves and I think realistically, if we can get him, he's very seriously could be our best signing for next season. I think he seems to be just a really smart keeper. Good, comes off his line pretty well most of the time when he gets the help from his defenders, when he isn't left doesn't get caught short by them. Good reflexes, good mobility, good distribution. So I think he sort of got it all, and I think if we can negotiate a deal over the summer, that'll be a sensational signing. And then for 1 point, I don't know. Pick a random name. Pick a name out of the hat. I'll give it to Slater, who was probably, I don't really remember, but I'm assuming he was busy in the midfield as usual.
Yeah, no, good shouts. And it's interesting, actually. We've got a few different votes between us. I went Darlow for the 3 votes. I thought he, it's not often a keeper's going to get maximum votes in a game when they concede 3 goals. But as you said, I don't think he's really at fault for any of the goals, and made a number of outstanding saves to keep the score down, if anything. So I got the 3 from me. I gave the 2 to Traore, who I thought had a really busy game in midfield, and again is just showing his quality against this level of opposition where he doesn't look out of place, and really impressed. And I think he's another where he's sort of only come into the side once the season's almost been dead effectively. So actually getting him from the start, touch wood, that we get him from the start of the season, can get a full season out of him. I think is really exciting for next season. So I think that was pretty cool to see. I actually haven't given a vote to Ali. I probably should, just for the goal, but I've gone the 1 vote to Seri, who I thought as well looked really, really outstanding and really neat in midfield. Again, I just sort of held off with Ali because whilst it was a good goal, and I know you said he did contribute, in other aspects in the game as well. I just felt like, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I think it would have been good to see him played as a central striker. I just think he lacks a little bit when he's playing out on the wing. He gets lost a bit sometimes. But it'll be interesting to see how we plan to use him for next season and how that all tracks. More positive result against Watford, the 1-0 win at home. Not everyone seemed to enjoy the game. I think we got listening to Fletcher's commentary on iPlayer. I follow the references to how slow the game was. I actually didn't mind it as much as some people. Like it did have that sort of end of season feel to it, but especially that second half when Watford had that handball claim and all the supporters started crying for handball every touch, and you had like the bit of incident with I want to say, was it with Vaughan, and then Malcolm got involved as well. Going down a bit easily.
Pedro cleaned him up from behind, I think, and then Malcolm got involved. And then Malcolm just threw himself on the floor. 100% play acting. That was
100%. But I thought the hit on Vaughan is arguably a red card because he's come in from behind with quite a bit of force, and whilst maybe by the letter of the law it's not, because it's not studs or anything like that. Just it's almost like a violent act where it's Vaughan's just not suspecting it at all, just gets completely smashed from behind. Thought he was reasonably fortunate to stay on the pitch.
Yeah, look, it was interesting because I just watched the highlights and that flashpoint didn't even feature.
Yeah, right.
But it was an interesting game. I think. I enjoyed it. I feel like it was. I think that the slowness maybe was surprising because Watford still had everything to play for. But then it's like basically once they went behind, they just they capitulated this week instead of us. Like they then was so slow going forward. When they miss a chance, they were just walking back. There was no urgency in anything they were doing. So I feel like potentially that's like sort of where the disappointment maybe comes in regards to this game. It wasn't that because I think we played really well and we kept trying to create and we kept trying to do the right things. But I think Watford got frustrated with the result and then realised that it was all slipping away, and that frustration just eventually grew out into those essential acts of violence where they, in that last half an hour of the game, they were just trying to bully us into submission in hopes of just
yeah. It was good to see. I mean, following Rosina's comments from the Boro game, it was actually good to see a bit of backbone in the side and not really capitulating to that physicality from Watford.
Yeah, because I think like you know, Malcolm coming into, and some of the boys coming in to protect Vaughan. I'm not like, I don't know what Malcolm hoped to achieve by throwing himself on the ground and like everything, but I think like it was good to see that level of camaraderie, and even like when Tufan scores the penalty, everyone's around him, and I think
It seems. I think back to the 12-13 promotion under Bruce when we had the big Irish core and everyone sort of saying how good the spirit at the club was, and I think we're starting to see a genesis of that here. Where, I mean, it's obviously gonna be hard because there'll be players moving on in the summer. I don't know what the core will look like next season, but you start to see some players in there who are really starting to develop good relationships. We talk about the penalty now. Tufan, I mean, I think I'd messaged the chat just maybe 4 or 5 minutes before the goal, thinking, will he celebrate if he scores against them? And I thought, because it just seemed destined to be that he was going to score against them. Couple of elements to the penalty. I mean, Vaughan with the lovely backheel flick to Slater to sort of open up the play and get him in on goal. And then Slater, it was such a strange one because it was in such slow motion that he's sort of like appealing as he's falling over, which you don't often see because it's like the Watford players already sort of slid in on the ground. But look, that must be about the third or fourth penalty that Slater's won for us. So he's getting into those attacking positions and drawing the contact in that sense. And then just an awesome finish from Tufan.
Yeah, I think it was good build-up play. The flick from Vaughan was great. Just great awareness, just to see that he didn't really have options in front of him. Didn't do too much with it. Heard the call, flicked it behind, and Slater. Yeah, it was a little comical. No, I've no doubt that it was a penalty, but I think like as you say, like because I think he looked for it as well. Because
it's one of those where he knows
slid in so soon. He's just gone, well, I can just roll the ball back here, and then I just let myself get taken. And
that's it.
And so I think because he knew it was all happening, he could see it all unfolding before him, is potentially why, basically before the Watford players even touched him, he's got his arms up and he's going, come on, give the penalty. But no, it was a well taken penalty. I think deserved, really. I think we played pretty well. We worked hard to get to that point, and ice cool from Tufan again. Just I think sent the keeper the wrong way, bottom left, placed it, so it was good.
Is that 7 or 8 goals for him now this season?
8 for the season now. So if he gets one in each of our last couple of games, he'll hit those double figures. And then we'd have that'll be the first. Would be 3 players that got to double figures with it.
Nah, 2.
There's only 2.
Two for the season, but it's a good shout. I don't know the lot. I mean, I think presumably League One season with Wilkes, KLP maybe, and Magennis. But in terms of championship, I'm thinking all the way back to like Hernandez and Diami maybe. Like I don't think any of the because Wilson didn't get to double figures with Bowen was here. I don't think anyone else got.
How did Campbell get last time he was here?
Yeah, mate. Well,
and then who else was with him? That's
be tight. Yeah. I don't think so though. I guess probably that season where we almost hit the playoffs. That second Atkins season, maybe. But yeah, no. Look, it'd be good. It'd be good to see Tufan get to double figures. I think he's like sort of my comment before about the camaraderie with the group. I think he's definitely developing a really good sort of role in the side. And I think whilst there might have been some doubt in January about his long-term future with the club, I think, even with Rosenior's, I guess, view of him, I think he's definitely coming much more into the picture now. And, when you think we've got him, we've got Traore, we've got Slater as those more attacking midfield options, I suppose, you can have that rotation without it being we don't trust you. It's more we can rotate those players to keep them fresh, which, like we saw with, obviously if we replace Pelkas with somebody else in the summer or how we deal with that position, not too sure. But you sort of think, if you have Pelkas playing one game, Tufan or the other, you get the best out of both of them.
Yeah, potentially. But yeah, I think we are. I think we sort of touched on it last time that I was on. We actually do. We've got a reasonable core to the squad, as you say, and then if you've got those 3 in a more attacking midfield sense, you've got Seri and Simons, who who fill that more defensive role.
And
which then,
Vaughn's looking awesome now all of a sudden.
And that's what when you said like replacement for Pelkas, I thought maybe even you just go, well, Vaughn's there, he slots into one of those, or potentially into one of those attacking third positions. But it's realistically not too bad when you're going to bring back, hopefully for next season, and everyone's fit. Oscar's back, Tete's back.
Connolly maybe.
Yeah, you don't know what's happening with Connolly and whether we do something there. But all of a sudden the front line doesn't look as dire as it does right now, even just with Oscar and Tete back. That changes the dynamic completely. So I actually don't know if there's too much work that needs to be done. I think I guess it's the same conversation we had, but like a few key additions in a few key positions, depending on who, like what the negotiations look like for contracts and things. But
if you exclude Darlow, who I think will sort out one way or the other, I'd say we probably only need 3 to 4 players. Like you say, probably a left back, maybe another wide player, and a striker is your 3. Maybe you get like another centre back or something. Well, okay. So when I say 3 to 4, I'd say 3 players as new additions, and then whatever we let go, you could look to replace. So if we let Figueiredo go, you get another centre back in, or if you let Tyler Smith go, you get another backup striker. And so I'm kind of going as new additions to the squad. You probably need 3 players, which is a really good spot to be in. Yeah,
I think Rosie's got. I think like it's one of those things where 6 months ago we probably looked at this picture very differently, but Rosie's sort of got a lot of these guys firing pretty well, so it's good to see. I think if we can continue finish the season off pretty strongly, not even though there's not really anything to play for, but I think we can potentially move up another spot or 2 on the table. So get as high as we can, finish off positively, sort out some contracts, have a break, come back. Do it all again,
absolutely. Well, so I gave Slater the 3 votes for this one. I thought similar to your comments with the Boro game, I thought he was everywhere in this one. Won the penalty, a really standout display from him. Tufan, the 2 votes for scoring the penalty, and also just looking pretty dangerous in the game. I thought he had a chance of getting a second. He might have celebrated a bit more wildly. Wasn't to be. And then Vaughan with the 1 vote. I thought another standout game from him, really showing that he does have a place at this level. And it I sort of alluded to or compared him to Bowen in the last episode with he's got that sort of similar body shape with the low center of gravity and really sort of attacking mindset on the wing, which hopefully we don't coach out of him. You sometimes see it with young players where they come in and they just have the shackles off, and then you see it coached out of them when they get the discipline. But hopefully he can continue that confidence and kick on next season. Yeah,
I think I actually have been really impressed with Vaughan and the maturity or whatever that he's shown with stepping in and basically coming straight into a starting role, in successive games. I think he's done outstanding. There was, I think, the first 20 minutes or something of the first game, he was a little bit nervous, but I think he got a shot away or something, and then pretty much from that point hasn't really ever looked back. And we talked about, or we referenced how he got cleaned up in that Watford game. He bounced back from that, didn't let any of those sort of things affect him. So I think, he is certainly one to watch for the future. And it's good to see that we are still producing good talent, as we sort of seem to find one of these players, every few years, every 2 or 3 years, we had Bowen, and then we found KLP, and then we've brought through Vaughan now. So it's good to see.
Yeah, well, I feel like with Vaughan, he's sort of like Koval, where we sort of signed them for the under-23s and then went, oh, actually, they're good enough to just slot into the first team. I assume he's probably played a couple of months because I think we only signed him in January from Oldham. So, but just, that talent spotting, I guess, in that sense is, and it shows as well, you don't need to be spending millions and millions of pounds to find these guys. Like, you can find these gems pretty cheap if you have the right sort of scouting network.
Right. So I went again, some similar, some different. I gave Tufan the 3 because I just thought he with a point to prove against Watford, I think he really did this time. He really stood up and played really, really well. Well taken penalty, and I think did pretty much everything he needed to do. I gave 2 to Seri this time, who I thought had a pretty good game. Helped to keep the ball moving around. Some nice plays to keep the ball moving when it seemed like we were going to get it bogged down. And 1 to Darlow, primarily for a save in the second half where he looked like he was going to get chipped. And then
yes,
around the post,
yes.
a big,
That was good.
big save that basically ensured that we kept the 3 points. So
I'd forgotten all about that. That was good.
yeah, it was a huge save. And there was twice where I think it was Macca both times allowed, unfortunately, the defender to get past. I think the other one was he tried to head it back to Darlow, but it was real soft and real terrible and left Darlow in no man's land. This one was more of I think Darlow was coming out, the defense was coming back, and then they were sort of neither was quite there, and I think it might have been Pedro tried to get the chip away, but Darlow got a big, or not even a big hand, but enough of a hand to make a big save. So I've given a point to him just for that, for securing the 3 points for us.
Good shout. Okay, well, let's do a quick round of Who Am I, and then we'll preview the Swansea game to finish off if you're ready to go.
Yep, let's go.
All right. So I've made 35 appearances for City, scoring 1 goal.
35 and 1. It's not I'm going to do this thing where I always go super recent. It's not like Seri, is it?
It is Seri. That's a great shout. That is a great shout. I was going super. I was trying to think if there's anyone else who's only got 1 goal this season, because I mean, you could have. I was thinking like Pelkas have. Oh, I think Pelkas has more than 1. Yeah, that's a great shout. First game of the season. Yeah, joined in City in 2022. Still at the club. Central midfield. We're the 24. I am Jean-Michel Seri. Yeah. Very speedy round of Who Am I? Well done. All
it's
right.
either real quick or it takes forever.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Hey, look, it's always worth that guess on the first clue. You never know. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll preview the Swansea game now. And I think a couple of weeks ago or a month ago when we were looking at our run-in and targeting games that we could get the 3 points to really sort of secure safety or sort of ensure that we're not going to get dragged into anything. This was probably a game that we penciled in as most likely to get 3 points in. But Swansea have now won their last 4 games and they're actually in with a shout at the playoffs in the end. So you sort of think Watford playing as if they have nothing to play for. Swansea is sort of the opposite, where they're going out beating all comers. Like they just beat Norwich 3-0, I think, on the weekend. Beat us earlier in the season 3-0 in what was Shotta's last game as well. So I'd hope that the side is kind of geared up for a bit of revenge on them for that result. But look, it'll be a tough prospect. It'll be a tough game for us, and it'll be an interesting watch in the sense that, as we say, we're sort of season's over, not a whole lot to play for, but there'll be players hopefully going out there playing for a future. So there should be a good level of performance, you'd hope.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good game, even though, as you say, it's sort of a nothing really game. We potentially have the opportunity to play Party Pooper again. So, I mean, maybe I think we sort of penciled that in, that was potentially all the fun we could have in the remainder of the season. Well, we might be able to, maybe we can go 2 weeks in a row, ruining some other teams' chances. But look, I think they've been pretty good. I think like even when we played them last time, they looked pretty decent. I know. Yeah, we looked at the table a couple of months ago and the run in and thought, oh, the last half a dozen games is, Swansea and Luton and Watford, and we definitely, Luton's in third, I think, at the minute.
Yeah.
Watford, we
just
expected to be higher. Obviously, Boro was probably when we looked, we're probably second, because I think for the large chunk of the season we're fighting off with Sheffield United. Yeah. So I think this definitely would have been on paper a while ago, looking like the easier of the fixtures, but a lot can change in football, and this could end up being the toughest game of our run in.
Yeah. One player I wanted to call out just quickly was Ryan Manning, who I think has said he's not signing a new contract at Swansea. He's their left back, and I think the suggestion or the presumption would be he's going on to bigger and better things. As a position that we're sort of after filling, and the fact that last summer we beat them off to get Cyrus Christie to sign with us instead of going back to Swansea. I would love to hold out a bit of hope that we could try and tempt Manning across, because I think that just feels such a natural need for us. And it's the sort of player we need to be targeting, where you think last summer we wouldn't have thought we were a chance to get someone like Seri, but he came to us. We wouldn't have thought we could get, Christie if it was a choice between us and Swansea, but he came to us. You've got to have that sort of ambitious target, I suppose, to go after these guys and say, well, why wouldn't we be the right club for them to come to if we're going for promotion? So he's one I'll be interested in watching, because I haven't seen a whole lot of him. I know he scored a few goals for them recently, so I'll be keeping an eye on him in this one.
Yeah, I think in terms of recruitment, it seems like Ajun gets fairly involved in that process, and because he's seems like such a likable fella, that I think he gets himself involved because of that, because he knows he can he can sell the dream and sell the story and get people to buy into that. So I think maybe it's time to get him to give him a call.
Just take him out to dinner after the game. Yeah,
right. You never know. Like, I think as you say, like some of these, regardless of what they say or why they decline a contract, like things change, right? Like, as you said with Seri, we never really thought it was sort of on and off and off and on, and he was here and then he was going to go to Italy and he was going to go somewhere else and he was going to go, and so we never really thought it was going to happen. It seemed like a fanciful, the dream we're being sold the dream, but whether it was going to get delivered, but they did in the summer and even in January. I think they did pretty well there. So hopefully do it again. But
that's it.
Going to be a tough game.
Changes for this one, and any changes you'd make to the 11?
I think we've got the full week to recover. I don't really see why we would. I can't really see any reason to make any forced changes. I know, which is very contrasting. I think a couple of weeks ago I was saying let's give blokes who are playing for contracts a bit of a run, but
I mean, Elder's in the side at the moment. Greaves is playing centre back, because this is where I start to think as well. Like, Jones is out with an injury. I assume he'll still be out, but that's just because the cynic in me thinks these guys are all just done for the season. Like, Oscar doesn't seem like he's coming back. Connolly, I don't know what's happening with him.
Yeah, I just don't know why you would I just don't. I think it's so close to the end that Rosie's gone. Like, why bother? Like, why?
Yeah.
You may as well just have start your off season, your preseason, have the extra time for rehab, and come back next season fully fit, raring to go, rather than come back for a game and risk one game or 2 games in season and risk re-injuring because you're not 110%. So, and it's wild because you go okay, so we've got no actual centre forwards in the squad, and yet we're not really missing them. So it's you look at the positive and you go for next season. Then once those guys come back in and we have a full squad to choose from, and you've got Traore feeding Tete and Oscar and those guys in and around the box, suddenly prospects don't look so bad.
That's it, and it means that we're sort of preparing other styles of play, so that you don't want to wish injuries on anyone. But if players were to get injured next season, we can be a bit more confident that we have these sorts of backup strategies or backup ways of playing that we're already prepared to play without certain personnel. So there's that positive as well. If you want to find a positive in injuries this season, I guess that would be one. How do you see this one going? Do you reckon we can pull out a win, or probably? I'd probably say I suspect Swansea will win this one, maybe 1 or 2-0. To be honest.
Look, I don't really know. It's so hard to say, because I feel like while 4 wins on the trot is very intimidating, but it's fairly difficult to go to nab that, to go 5 wins, to go 6 wins in a row, and I don't know. Potentially the pressure will get to them, like it did to Watford. So
That's it.
because every game, every week that passes, and they've only got 2 games left, and they probably need to pick up all 6 points to make that.
Yeah, I was just about to look that up.
To secure it properly, but.
So what are they? They're currently in 12th, which, but geez, I mean, the table's pretty condensed because they're in 12th on 62. Sunderland are in 6th on 65.
Okay, so they kind of realistically they need to win the 2
Yeah.
remaining games
to have a chance.
Any chance, yeah. So
I mean, Coventry are 5th on 66 as well. So there's really those 2 spots that are basically anyone from Coventry to Swansea could theoretically get. But, you've got Swansea, Blackburn and Preston with pretty outrageously bad goal differences compared to the rest. So you'd think, I mean, that's also a case in point that Swansea might come out and say we need to pump up our goal difference and try and get 3 or 4 on us. So that could make it a bit interesting as well.
Yeah, I don't really know. I think actually that approach will actually suit us. If they come out sort of possession heavy, attack heavy, we can sit back and counter on them and find that space in behind for guys like Ali. Yeah, I think look, I really have no idea. I think it's with them having so much to play for and like so many different elements to it. I feel like it's really hard because like I would not have tipped a 1-0 win over Watford at all.
Yeah.
Like I just thought with them, that having to win that to stay in a chance and being like one of the promotion or like the playoff favorites like at the beginning of the season, I would have thought. And I mean, they have a decent squad. They had some really good quality players, but they just didn't stand up. So, maybe I'd be happy to ruin another team's chances. But I think you're probably right. I feel like this might be might go against us, but I don't know. I don't really feel like they're going to put score on us. I think it'll be pretty tight. I think we've. I mean, obviously, I say we tightened it up, but apart from that Middlesbrough game, I think like we're after that 1-0 at Watford, we were like 7 clean sheets in the last 10 home games or something like that. So there's quite a lot. So quite a lot of good statistics on our side as well. So I don't know, maybe like a 2-0 win to Swansea.
I mean, it says a lot about our early season form that we're still sitting there with the -10 goal difference despite all those clean sheets, but there you go. Look, it'll be an interesting game, and then we've got the last game of the season next week against Luton as well, so it kind of comes to a close. I think the way that we'll do things for the podcast, we'll probably do our preview episode next week for the Luton game, and then we'll probably take a couple of weeks off the podcast. I'm thinking we'll try and do a couple of those decade review episodes during the playoffs probably. And then once the dust settles on the season, we know what the championship's going to look like next season. We can do our season review episode and sort of start to preliminary look ahead to next season as well. But look, thanks for joining me today, Dan.
No worries.
And thank you everyone for listening in as well. We'll be back this time next week too, or probably not literally this time. It's a early morning episode here on Anzac Day, but we'll be back probably next Wednesday to review the Swansea fixture, look ahead to our last game of the season and all that it entails. But until then, come on, City.